Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The virtual crowd roared in unison, their holographic banners shimmering in bright neon hues, displaying Alex Turner sending. Alex stood on a raised platform in the center of the city square, but not in reality. His avatar gleamed in the perfect artificial light of the digital world. Here in the vast expanse of the government, Utopia, everything looked pristine. People smiled without a care in the world, dressed in immaculate clothes, their faces free of worry. The virtual utopia was perfection in every pixel. But perfection had its price. Alex's voice boomed over the vast square. What you see here, its size all a lie, and I will not stop until every citizen knows the truth. His words reverberated through the seamless streets, though they were carefully coded not to breach any of the utopia is built-in censorship filter. The election for the new global council was just weeks away, and Alex knew the stake. But the citizens in the VR world weren't aware that beyond the confines of this digital paradise, there existed a decaying real world. Alex's message cut through the illusions. He was the only candidate daring to question the system, the only one willing to expose the cost of their comfort. After the rally, Alex deactivated the connection to his VR rig, removing the visor from his sweat-covered brow. His small, dim apartment greeted him, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the digital stage. The room was cold, metal walls lined with minimal furniture. The reality here was harsh. He rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of the mission ahead. A sharp knock echoed on the door. Alex tensed his hand, instinctively reaching for the hidden knife under his desk. But it wasn't out the secret police. It was Eva Limline. She stepped inside with her usual brisk, almost robotic energy, her eyes never staying still as they scanned the room. Eva was more than just his campaign advisor. She was the key to unraveling the government's control. A hacker with unrivaled skills. She had once been on the other side, working for the regime until the system took everything from her. You shouldn't have done that, Eva said, her tone a mix of anger and concern. What the speech? Alex asked, pushing himself off the chair. They were watching you closer than ever, she said, tossing a small tablet onto the table. Here, new data from our contacts in the lower districts, they've confirmed it. Alex stared at the screen, his eyes darkening as the images played. In the lower districts, those left behind in the physical world, people were enslaved in squalid conditions, working endlessly to maintain the infrastructure that powered the utopia. They labored in factories, warehouses, and energy plants, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. It was their suffering that kept the VR paradise alive. Perfect world, he muttered under his breath, all built on their back. And the regime is erasing anyone who speaks out, Eva said coldly. That's why they will come for you next. I am not backing down, Alex said, eyes hardening. I am going to bring this whole thing crashing down. Eva's expression softened just for a moment. I'll be with you until the end. She pulled up another screen, her fingers swiping across data points. I've cracked the encryption on the VR security grid. We have a window. If we can get inside the central hub, we can broadcast everything, show them the truth about the lower district. They'd shut it down before we get the chance. Not if we plan it right. Alex paced the room, his mind racing. The truth needed to come out, but if they failed, the consequences would be devastating, not just for him, but for the dissidents, for the people who still believed in freedom. The election, he murmured, stopping in his tracks. We need to do it during the final debate. It's all the one moment when everyone is watching. Eva raised an eyebrow. You mean hijack the debate? That seemed dangerous. That's why it'll work, Alex said, his face set in determination. We'll hit them when they least expect it. Eva worked tirelessly, hacking into the regime, Sci-FiWorlds, tracing their every move. Meanwhile, Alex continued his campaign, all the while knowing that the real battle wasn't for votes, it was for the truth. As the day of the debate approached, Alex met secretly with Thomas Vega, a low-ranking official in the regime who had grown disillusioned with President Marcus Lee. Tomas was their inside man, the one who could give them access to the government central server. Are you sure about this? Alex asked, meeting Tom as in the shadowy back alleys of the real-world city. The tall, gaunt man looked older than his years, the weight of his discontent visible in his sunken eye. If you're asking whether I want to die a traitor or live a liar, I choose the former, Tomas said, his voice hoarse. The people deserve to know what's really going on. This isn't our life, it's in the digital prison. Alex nodded. We were counting on you. Tomas handed Alex a small device. This will bypass the first firewall. After that, it's side up to your hacker. I want to fail, Eva said, her tone steely as ever. The debate was held in the virtual world, a grand spectacle designed to showcase the candidate's strength. Marcus Laren, the reigning dictator, appeared as the ideal leader, his avatar radiating confidence, his features sharp and clean. Beside him, Alex looked ordinary by comparison. His simple suit and weary expression, a stark contrast to the polished grandeur of the incumbent president. As the debate began, Marcus Lie's words flowed like honey. He spoke of unity, peace, and the perfection of the Utopia. The audience, both virtual and real, ate it up. Alex stood quietly, waiting for the right moment. Then the signal came from Eva. It was time. Alex stepped forward, interrupting Marcus mid-sentence. "You talk about perfection," Alex said, his voice cutting through the digital air. "But the truth is, UV built this world on lies." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus Lie smirked, unfazed. "Lies, the only lie here is that you think you can offer something better." "Let me show you what I mean," Alex said, his heart pounding. He activated the device Thomas had given him, sending the pre-programmed signal to Eva. For a moment, the virtual world flickered, then the broadcast feed changed. Instead of the pristine, perfect cityscape, images of the lower districts appeared: starving workers, crumbling buildings. The grim reality of the real world lay bare for all to see. The crowd gasped. Marcus Lie's smirk vanished. "This is the truth," Alex shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "This is the price of your so-called utopia. This is what they don't want you to see." In an instant, alarms blared across the virtual world. The regime's security forces scrambled to shut down the broadcast, but it was too late. The images spread like wildfire, leaking into every corner of the digital network. People began to question the world they thought they knew. Fear, anger, and confusion rippled through the masses. Marcus Lie, now visibly enraged, pointed a finger at Alex. "You will pay for this." Before Alex could respond, his virtual feed was cut, and the world around him dissolved into darkness. When Alex opened his eyes, he was back in his cramped apartment, the VR visor discarded on the floor. He could hear the distant sounds of sirens outside, the regime already on the move. "They were coming," Eva said, her voice tight with urgency as she packed up her equipment. "We knew this would happen," Alex replied, his pulse still racing. "But the truth is out there now. They can. Trish, stop it." Eva paused, her hands still for a moment. "But they'll try to stop us." Alex didn't respond, his mind already racing ahead. They had struck the first blow, but the war was far from over. Eva worked quickly, her fingers moving over the terminal with practiced speed, dismantling the equipment they had used for the broadcast. The sirens outside grew louder, a constant reminder that the regime wasn't going to let them walk away easily. Alex paced the room, every nerve in his body on edge. His mind raced, knowing their next moves had to be precise, or everything they do accomplish could collapse in an instant. "They were tracking the signal back to this location," Eva said, her voice low, almost too calm. "We need to be gone 5 minutes ago." Alex ran his hand through his hair, the weight of what they'd done still sinking in. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and nodded. "Let's move." The door burst open as they slipped into the narrow alleyway behind the building, barely ahead of the security forces that descended on the apartment. The night sky was cloudy, the dense smog from the lower districts choking the air. They ran, sticking to the shadows, weaving through side streets and alleyways that twisted like a labyrinth. The city in the real world was nothing like the pristine, utopian VR paradise. It was cold, dark, and oppressive. Eva led the way, her knowledge of the city's layout flawless, her movements precise. "There's a safe house a few blocks from here," she said without looking back, her voice steady even as the tension mounted. Alex glanced over his shoulder, catching a glimpse of figures in the distance, the regime's security forces in pursuit. "They were gaining on us." "They want to catch us if we keep moving," she replied, her pace quickening. The safe house was a small, dilapidated building tucked between two factories, barely noticeable amidst the urban decay. They slipped inside, bolting the door behind them. The room was sparse, just a table, a few chairs, and a couple of cots. Thomas Vega sat in one of the chairs, waiting for them. His face was gaunt, pale under the dim light of a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. "They've declared you a terrorist," Tomas said, getting straight to the point. Alex didn't flinch. "I expected as much. How bad is it?" "Bad," Tomas said. "They were calling it a national security breach. They've locked down the central VR hub. No one's from getting in or out of the system until they can scrub the footage." Eva scoffed. "Scrub it. It's already out there." They can undo what's been seen. They'll try it, Tomas said, his voice grim. They were good at controlling the narrative. They've already started broadcasting counter messages claiming the footage is doctored, a manipulation by dissident. Alex sat heavily on one of the chairs, the exhaustion hitting him all at once. He knew this wouldn't be easy. He knew they wouldn't just lay down and accept defeat. But hearing at the speed with which they reacted, the lengths they'd go to still hit hard. So what's then the next step? Eva crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing in thought. We need to hit them again. Harder this time. How? Alex asked. The VR hub isn't just the center of the virtual world, she explained. It's also where they store all their data. If we can get in, we can pull the files. They don't want anyone to see. The records of how the lower districts were systematically destroyed, the exploitation, the human rights violations, everything. Thomas looked uneasy. That place is a fortress. Getting in would be suicide, maybe Eva said, but it's the only way to stop them from rewriting the narrative. Alex leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. If we expose them again with undeniable proof, we can turn the tide. People won. Treat be able to ignore the truth any longer. Thomas sighed, rubbing his temples. If you're going to do this, you will need my help. I still have access to some of the inner security protocol. It won't be easy, but I can get you past the outer defensive. Eva nodded, her expression resolute. We'll need to move fast. They'll tighten security after tonight. The next night, under the cover of darkness, Alex, Eva, and Tomas made their way toward the central VR hub. The building loomed like a monolith in the distance, a towering structure of sleek metal and glass, glowing faintly in the city. Smog choked air. It was heavily guarded, just as Thomas had warned, with security drones circling overhead and armed guards posted every entrance. Ava moved ahead, hacking into the building's outer systems from a remote terminal. Give me a second, she muttered, her fingers flying over the key. I'll shut down the surveillance feeds for 2 minutes. That's all the time we've got. Tomas glanced nervously at the armed guards. 2 minutes isn't a lot. It's all we need, Alex said, steeling himself for what was to come. The moment Eva gave the signal, they moved. The guards didn't see them, their attention distracted by the sudden blackout in the surveillance system. They slipped through the front entrance, Tomas leading the way to a maintenance corridor that bypassed the main security checkpoint. The interior of the building was stark cold. The hum of machinery echoed through the halls as they made their way deeper into the facility. Eva hacked into one terminal after another, unlocking doors and bypassing security systems with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times before. When they reached the data center, Tomas' hand trembled as he scanned his iPad. This is as far as I go, he said, his voice thick with fear. If I go any further, they will know it was me. Alex clapped him on the shoulder. You've done more than enough. Get out of here before they catch on. Tomas nodded and slipped away, disappearing back into the maze of corridors. Inside the data center, Eva immediately got to work, plugging into the main terminal. This is it, she said, her voice hushed with concentration. Once I start downloading, they'll know we were here. We won't have much time. Do it, Alex said. The screen flickered as the data began transferring for a moment. Everything was still. Then the alarms blared. They're coming, Eva said, her eyes locked on the screen. We need to hold them off until the download is complete. Alex positioned himself at the door, ready for the inevitable confrontation. He had no weapon, but desperation fueled him. They were too close to give up now. The first wave of guards arrived, their boots thundering down the hall. Alex grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall, using it as a makeshift weapon. He swung it with all his strength as the guards breached the door, catching one in the face. Another guard lunged at him, but Alex ducked, slamming the extinguisher into the man's gut. Almost done, Eva shouted over the chaos. More guards poured in, and Alex said, arms grew heavy from the effort. He was outnumbered, exhausted, but he fought on, knowing that this was the only chance they had. Suddenly the room went silent, the screen blinked, and the transfer was complete. We got it, Eva said, her voice breathless. Without hesitation, they bolted from the room, sprinting down the corridors as the guards gave chase. The hall seemed endless, the exits too far away, but they kept running, adrenaline pushing them forward. They burst through a side door, spilling into the night. The cold air hit Alex's face like a slap, but they didn't stop. They ran until their lungs burned, until the shouts of the guards faded into the distance. Finally, they collapsed in an alleyway, gasping for breath. Eva held up the small data chip, a triumphant smile on her face. We did it. Alex leaned back against the wall, his heart still pounding now. We show the world what they've been hiding. The release of the data was like a bomb going off. It spread through the digital networks, a tidal wave of truth that couldn't be stopped. The footage of the lower districts, the records of human rights violations, the undeniable proof of the regime's exploitation, it all came crashing down on the government. People who had once been content in their virtual paradise began to wake up to the reality they had ignored for so long. Protests erupted in both the real and virtual worlds. The regime's grip on power weakened with every passing day. Marcus Live appeared on every podcast, desperately trying to control the narrative. But it was too late. The people had seen the truth, and they wouldn't be silent. As the regime crumbled, Alex stood before a crowd once more, this time in the real world. The faces that looked back at him weren't the perfect avatars of the VR Utopia. They were real people, flawed, scarred, and human, but they were free. The truth is out, Alex said, his voice carrying over the crowd. Now it's set up to us to build a world where we don't need illusions to survive. The cheers that followed were real, just like the world they were finally ready to reclaim.